I was talking yesterday to someone who has also been in the business for years, and we kind of agreed there's really no possibility of a favorable outcome. I'm sorry to say. In each instance, they're going to have to print money just to pay the interest on the existing debts and so forth. And in my view, this will lead to inflation.
Okay.
But you understand, since the beginning of the year, the long bond in America, there's a TLT ETF. Everybody looks at the TLT ETF to determine the strengths and the weakness of the bond market. The
Yeah.
TLT is down 1.6%. The Nasdaq is down like 9%, and many stocks are down 20% in the first 3 months of the year. So my view is I rather have bonds. I lose some money, but this is my view. After 40 years of asset price inflation, I call this asset price inflation. I think that asset prices will go down for everything, including gold and silver and stocks and bonds and everything down, collectibles.
Yeah.
But some things will go to zero. All Trump related companies will go to zero. Many companies where he's involved in, based on the past experience, they all will be zeros.
Wow.
But anyway, let's talk about the ones that will go down less. I think gold and silver and precious metals and platinum, they also go down. But if the Trump companies all go to zero and you and I own gold and it goes down 20%, then relatively speaking, we are doing well. Let's say, of course, people will say oil is expensive, but it depends how you measure it. If you measure it in gold, then oil is not terribly expensive. Say we start with an energy price of $10 in the early 1970s. It had been lower than that before, but say it was artificially low, or artificially kept low by the international oil companies until 1973, and then we had the increase by OPEC. If we start at $10 and now the price is over $100, up 10 times in almost 50 years, it's up less than gold. It's up less than silver. I think actually oil has just embarked on another upward leg in prices, and we could be going up for it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see the current oil price being the next normal. That we're around here, and then we fluctuate up and down depending on demand and supply in the world and so forth. But if I look at the per capita consumption of oil, and I look at it at the US, and I look at it at China 20 years ago and at China today and at India now, and India is 1.3 billion people. Mr. Trump, he doesn't know that, but maybe he watches your show and then he can learn something. You know, I'm happy to teach him something about the world, how the world looks like in terms of geography and in terms of population. But anyway, you know, the structural demand for energy will go up. And it is true that some alternate forms of energy are gaining market share. But I'm sorry to say, to make a blade of a windmill, you also need energy. And to transport the bloody wing of a windmill, you need a truck. That is a huge thing, you know. I mean, people have a kind of the impression that you can get rid of oil and diesel and gasoline. This is simply not the case. It won't happen. And then people talk up, I have an energy saving car, an electric vehicle. Okay. The electricity also has to be generated from somewhere.
Faber also connects the inflation story to energy. He argues that oil is not as expensive as it looks when measured against gold, and that the world is likely entering another upward leg in energy prices.
I'm sorry to say, I don't think this conflict will be over in like 3 weeks. I think it can last forever because the Israelis want a solution. And their solution is actually to get rid of an Iran that could be hostile to them. You understand? That means the complete destruction of the country or the domination of the country. I mean, Netanyahu is not exactly my model of a desirable leader. I think he's sort of a mad Zionist who has very, very evil ideas about the world and about human rights and so forth. But of course, my Jewish friends disagree with me, and I understand to some extent their views. But a preventive war is like, as Bismarck said, the German chancellor at the end of the 19th century. He said that preventing war is like committing suicide because you're afraid to die. You understand? So I think this war is a complete disaster. And about the last, that I want to make sure that everybody understands. The last thing anyone would want is an Iran that is dominated and ruled by the duo Netanyahu-Trump. Do you think the Russians would like it? You think the Chinese would like it? You think the Arabs would like it? Nobody would like it. That is a clear. And that's why I don't think there will be a peace anytime soon. How is Trump going to tell the Israelis, stop bombing Iran?
Yeah. Well, Marc Faber,
But I tell you for sure, already today, Iran has strong support from other countries. Maybe not yet manpower, but the Pashtun in both Pakistan and Afghanistan, they're of course largely in favor of Persia, of the Iranian, and they will support them with manpower if they have to. And these are experienced fighters. A land force in Iran is going to find very strong resistance. That I assure you. This is a very good question, and I have no precise answer. But I think if I look at this whole stupidity of war in Iran, I think to some extent, not maybe in every respect, but to some at least, Netanyahu wanted to distract the attention from the failure and the human rights abuses in the Gaza Strip. And Trump, he was sort of forced into it by the Epstein files that must have contained a whole book on Trump's relationship to Mr. Epstein and the time he spent with him. And that he wanted to kind of hide from the public's attention. But to conduct the war for that is really a stupidity that is beyond any measures. But I mean, I would have voted for Mr. Trump any time and still would vote for him because the alternatives are so bad. But he's an imbecile. He's an idiot. He's plainly stupid. And that is, in a case of war, of course, disastrous. I mean, every American must scratch his head and say to himself, what the hell is happening to our democracy if we can't put up someone who is a more suitable person and more diplomatic than Mr. Trump is, and less of a liar. I mean, politicians, they go through the school of liars, and so they become expert at lying about everything. But Trump does it so blatantly and contradicts him within the same speech so often that you scratch your head. That touches on the liquidity issues that you just brought up. In an environment where liquidity shrinks, the liquidity in the past, I'm saying not always, but usually has gone into cash and it's gone into bonds. But the problem is that we're entering this period of illiquidity without that much bond prices being low. In other words, the bond, say the 10 years yields now slightly over 4%. If I look at Mr. Trump, if I look at the US deficit, the budget deficit, the fiscal deficit, and I look at the trajectory of debts in the US, which cannot do anything else but going up, because they need money for social security and for all kinds of benefits and for the army. And increasingly, the government needs money to pay the interest on the existing debt. And if interest rates are already low now, and all this happens at the same time, it's difficult to see how interest rates will go down. Now, I have written in my reports that I own bonds. I always own some bonds, but the maturity changes. I mean, I can own bonds. We call them notes or bills that are 3 months or 6 months or 1 year, but I can also own bonds that are 30 years. Now, the reason I own 30-year bonds, I think the Fed, if Walsh gets appointed under Trump's pressure, in theory, they could slash interest rates to zero. Okay. Now the bond market, well, they can do it. They can control short-term rate, but the long-term rates, they don't control. And since September 2024, the Fed has reduced interest rates. They cut the Fed fund rate repeatedly. And what happened to the bond market? It didn't rally, but bonds went down. In other words, interest rates on the long end went up. So this tells me the Fed, to a large extent, has lost its power, but they can still cut short-term rates. And in theory, I'm not saying they're going to do it, but in theory, the government could reduce or stop altogether the issuance of long-term bonds of 5, 10, and 20, 30-year bonds, and issue all short-term. You understand?
Yeah.
So if they issue